The morning after the town council meeting, I woke up with a sense of weight lifted from my shoulders, but also the knowledge that this was just one victory in a long and complex battle. The Riverside development had been approved, yes, but the real work was just beginning. Now, we had to follow through, ensure that everything we promised would be delivered. And beyond that, I knew Diana and Lawrence Blackwood weren't going to sit quietly while I carried out my father's plans. I had the deeds, the will, and the community's support, but they still had influence, and they weren't going down without a fight. Grace and I took a walk through the newly greened area of what would eventually become the Riverside development. The grass was freshly planted, and I could almost imagine what it would look like in 5 years. Families enjoying the green spaces, small businesses thriving in their new storefronts, children playing near the community center. It wasn't just a dream anymore. It was becoming a reality. Max, you know this is just the beginning, right? Grace said, her voice a little quieter than usual. I smiled and nodded. I know, but it feels good to have the first big hurdle out of the way. Big hurdle? She gave me a sideways glance. This is just the first of many. I chuckled. You're right, but for today, I'm going to enjoy it. We sat by the river for a while, watching the water flow, thinking about all that had happened and how far we'd come. The feeling of finally being on the right path was both comforting and unsettling at the same time. I'd spent so many years running away from Maplewood, thinking that I could make a name for myself in the world without the baggage of my family, the expectations, and the old TIs that had kept me tethered. But now, it was clear that running away hadn't solved anything. Returning to Maplewood, taking my place in the family business, wasn't just about claiming what was mine. It was about continuing what my father had built, about seeing through his vision and not letting the people who sought to tear it down have their way. Later that afternoon, I met with Franklin Ross, my father's longtime business partner. He had been a rock during the transition, offering advice and guidance when it felt like I was facing insurmountable odds. You're doing well, Maxwell, Franklin said, sitting across from me in his office. But don't get too comfortable. Diana hasn't stopped trying to turn people against you. She's been working behind the scenes, making alliances, trying to secure her hold on the company. I know, I replied. I'm not taking my eye off the ball, but for now, we've got the town's backing, and that's what counts. If we can get this development going and show that it benefits everyone, it'll be harder for them to tear it down. Franklin raised an eyebrow. You're confident. I have to be. You're not just dealing with business matters here, Maxwell. You're dealing with a family who's been playing the game much longer than you've been back. Diana has her claws in this town deeper than you think. I sat back, considering his words carefully. I know, but I'm not backing down. Not this time. The more I worked on the Riverside development, the more I realized just how much there was to do. There were meetings with contractors, land surveys to complete, and permits to secure. But what had become clear to me as I moved forward was that this project was more than just about creating a physical space. It was about reshaping the future of Maplewood. One evening, as I sat in my office, surrounded by blueprints and files, I received a call from Margaret, my father's former executive assistant, who had stayed on to help with the transition. She had always been the heart and soul of Harrison Properties, and even though Diana had made many changes to the company's structure, Margaret's loyalty to my father remained unwavering. Maxwell, you need to come to the office, she said, her voice urgent. We've got a problem. I put down the pen I was holding, instantly alert. What's going on? It's Tyler, she said. He's making a move. I didn't need to ask what kind of move. Tyler had been a loose cannon for years, doing whatever he pleased and never fully grasping the seriousness of what it meant to take control of the company. But now, I couldn't help but feel a slight sense of responsibility for him. After all, he was my brother, whether he liked it or not. I'll be right there, I said, grabbing my jacket and heading out the door. When I arrived at the office, I found Margaret waiting for me, her expression tense. He's been meeting with some of Diana's old associates, she explained. They're talking about undermining your leadership at the company. They're pushing for a vote of no confidence. I ran a hand through my hair, frustrated but not surprised. Of course they are, Margaret sighed. Maxwell, I think we need to address this now before it gets out of hand. I nodded. Let's do it. I'll call a meeting with the board. If Tyler wants to play dirty, he'll see that I'm not afraid to fight for what's mine. Margaret looked at me carefully, then spoke in a quieter voice. I'm not worried about Tyler. I'm worried about Diana. She's already making moves behind the scenes, trying to gain control of Harrison Properties again. And she's not alone. The weight of her words settled heavily in the room. Diana had always been calculating, and the thought of her trying to regain control of everything my father had built made my blood run cold. I couldn't let her undo everything he had worked for, everything I was trying to do now. I'll handle it, I said firmly. But thank you, Margaret. You've always had my back, and I won't forget it. She nodded, giving me a reassuring smile. You're your father's son, Maxwell. You'll figure it out. The next few days were a blur of tense meetings, calls to attorneys, and strategy sessions. Diana wasn't just going to let go of Harrison Properties without a fight, and she was already using the influence she had left in the town to rally support. But there was one thing I had that she didn't: community support. The people of Maplewood had backed my vision for the future. They saw the long-term benefits of a development that prioritized local businesses and affordable housing over luxury condos for the rich. Still, there were moments when doubt crept in. Tyler, despite everything, was still my brother, and I wondered whether I had done enough to keep him from following in Diana's footsteps. He had never understood the sacrifices that went into building a legacy, but he had always been talented in his own way, just not in the way I had imagined. One afternoon, Tyler called me. His voice sounded different, this time less confrontational, more vulnerable. Maxwell, he said, I know things have been rough between us, but I want to make this right. I want to help you with the company. I've been thinking about everything, and I know I've been an idiot. I was taken aback by his words. Tyler had never apologized for anything, at least not in a way that felt sincere. But this time, there was a change in his tone, something I hadn't heard before. Maybe it was the weight of everything that had happened. Maybe he finally understood that there was more at stake than just his own ambitions. Tyler, I don't know what you expect from me, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. But this company, this town, it's not just about us anymore. It's about something bigger. I get it now, Tyler said, his voice softer. I know I can't do this alone. I want to work with you, Maxwell. Let's put everything behind us and focus on what we can build together. I was silent for a moment, processing his words. It wasn't easy for me to forgive him, not after everything that had happened. But I realized something in that moment. Maybe Tyler didn't need to be a threat to the legacy my father had left. Maybe, just maybe, he could be part of it. All right, I said finally. But this has to be real, Tyler. No more games. You and I, we're going to make sure this company thrives for everyone in Maplewood. Together. There was a pause, and then Tyler spoke again, his voice full of something I hadn't heard in a long time. Hope. I'm in. Let's do this. The following weeks were a whirlwind of change, but I felt a new sense of determination take root in me. With Tyler's newfound commitment, we were beginning to reshape the future of Harrison Properties together. Our first order of business was to meet with the board and get them fully on board with the Riverside project. I knew that without the board's unanimous support, the development could be sabotaged, and the last thing I wanted was for Diana's influence to creep back into the decision-making process. Tyler, despite his past mistakes, had become an unexpected ally. He had been quiet during the meeting with the board, but when it came time to speak, he surprised everyone. I've spent a lot of time trying to prove myself in ways that didn't make sense, he said, looking around the room at the board members. But Maxwell's vision for this town, for this company, is something I believe in. I've seen what's happening here, and I want to be a part of it. It wasn't easy for Tyler to admit that he had been wrong. But hearing him say it, hearing him take responsibility meant more to me than I could have expected. I knew that my father would have been proud of us, even if he had never been able to see us come together in the way we had. The meeting was long, filled with back and forth discussions, but in the end, the board approved the Riverside project in its entirety. We had cleared another hurdle, but I knew that the real challenge was still ahead. As much as I wanted to celebrate, the pressure was mounting. Diana had gone quiet for a while, but I could feel her presence lurking in the background, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. It wasn't just the business that I was fighting for, it was the future of Maplewood, and that meant I couldn't afford to make any mistakes. I was spending most of my time at the site, overseeing the progress. As I walked through the area, where the first set of buildings were being constructed, I could see the vision slowly coming to life. The foundation for the community center was going in, and the green spaces were beginning to take shape. But what struck me most was the energy of the people who were working on the project. They weren't just employees, they were members of the community. They saw themselves in the work they were doing, and that made all the difference. One afternoon, as I walked through the construction site, I ran into Grace, who had been helping me stay focused through all the chaos. "You're a little more quiet than usual," she said, looking up from a set of blueprints. I smiled at her. "Just thinking, this project, it's more than just a development. It's about the people, about what we're building for them." She nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. It's not just buildings, it's the foundation of something that will last. And that's why people are behind you. They see the vision." "I hope so," I said, feeling a weight settle in my chest. "But there's still so much more to do. And Diana, I don't think she's done yet." Grace's expression shifted to one of concern. "She's still plotting something, isn't she?" "I can feel it," I said quietly. "She's too quiet to composed. I know she's not going to just let me take over Harrison Properties without a fight." As if on cue, my phone buzzed. In my pocket, I pulled it out, expecting a call from my lawyer or one of the contractors, but instead, it was a message from an unknown number. "We need to talk." "This isn't over." It was Lawrence Blackwood. The message from Lawrence Blackwood hit me like a cold wave. For the first time in a while, I felt the familiar tension return to my shoulders. Diana had been silent for weeks, but Lawrence was never one to back down. His message was clear. The battle for Maplewood for Harrison Properties was far from over. I showed the text to Grace, who raised an eyebrow. "It's exactly what I've been worried about," she said, her tone grim. "Lawrence isn't going to just roll over, especially with Diana pulling the strings from behind the scenes." I nodded, my mind racing. I knew this wouldn't be easy, but I wasn't expecting him to come at me like this. Grace stepped closer, her expression focused. "You need to meet with him. You can't let him keep making moves in the dark. Let him know where you stand." I agreed. "I'll set something up." "This ends now." I immediately called Lawrence's office, arranging a meeting. I wasn't going to wait around for him to make his next move. I was ready to face him head on. The next afternoon, I found myself sitting across from Lawrence in his sleek, modern office. The walls were adorned with framed photos of his past developments, luxury high-rises, resorts, sprawling properties that screamed wealth and exclusivity. The contrast between his world and mine was stark. He thrived on the shiny exterior, while I was focused on the substance, on creating something real that would benefit the entire community. Lawrence leaned back in his chair, his eyes glinting with calculated confidence. "Maxwell," he said with a smirk, "I didn't think you'd be brave enough to meet with me." "I'm not here to play games, Lawrence," I replied, meeting his gaze. "I'm here to make sure we're clear on what's happening next. The Riverside project is moving forward, and I'm not backing down from it." Lawrence chuckled softly, clearly unfazed. "You think you've won, don't you? The vote from the town council, yes, that was a nice touch. But you and I both know it's not that simple. There are bigger players involved, people who want to see Maplewood evolve. They're not interested in some nostalgia-fueled pipe dream of affordable housing and quaint community spaces." I kept my tone steady. "You've already shown your cards, Lawrence. Your vision is nothing more than a luxury playground for the rich. You've completely disregarded the heart of this town, its people." "I'm not going to let you tear that apart." Lawrence's smile faded slightly, but he quickly regained his composure. "You're naive if you think this town can thrive on idealism alone. Maplewood needs real investment, real wealth, not more small-town charm. I'm building something that will last, Lawrence. Something that benefits everyone. People need a place to live, to work, to grow. That's what I'm offering. What you're offering is just a temporary fix, a cash grab that will drive people out, not bring them together." He leaned forward, his fingers steepled in front of him. "You're playing a dangerous game, Maxwell. You're not as untouchable as you think. I've got connections, power, and influence. Don't think for a second that you can stand in the way of what's coming." I stood up, feeling the weight of his words, but also the surge of resolve that had carried me this far. "I'm not afraid of your threats, Lawrence. This town is my home, and I'll do whatever it takes to make sure it stays that way. You don't know what you're up against." He smirked again, standing up as well. "We'll see, won't we?" With that, I turned and left his office, my heart pounding. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was personal. Lawrence wasn't the only one with power. Diana's allies might still be lurking in the shadows, but I had something they didn't: the trust of the community. And that was a force stronger than anything money could buy. Later that night, as I sat with Grace, the weight of the conversation with Lawrence settled in. "I think he's playing for bigger stakes now," I said quietly, my mind still racing from the meeting. "He's not just interested in the Riverside project anymore. He wants to control the town, and I'm standing in his way." Grace sat beside me, her hand resting on mine. "He won't win, Max. You've already built something here. The community trusts you. You've got their support, and that's the strongest foundation you can have." "I know," I said, squeezing her hand. "But we can't let our guard down. Not with people like him in the mix." Grace smiled gently. "You've got this. You're not alone in this fight." Her words helped, but I knew that the battle was far from over. I had the community on my side, but that wasn't enough to defeat Lawrence and Diana. They were ruthless, and they'd do whatever it took to get what they wanted. The next day, as I walked through the construction site, I saw the workers hard at work, saw the first signs of the Riverside development taking shape. It was hard not to feel a sense of pride. This wasn't just a business deal. It was a vision coming to life, something that would shape the future of Maplewood for generations. But just as I was lost in my thoughts, my phone rang again. It was Margaret. "Maxwell, you need to get down here," she said, her voice urgent. "There's been a development. You need to see this." I dropped everything and rushed to the site. When I arrived, Margaret was waiting for me with a worried look on her face. "What's going on?" I asked, my pulse quickening. She handed me a set of papers. "This was just delivered to my office. It's a court order." I scanned the papers quickly, feeling a wave of dread wash over me as I read the details. It was a lawsuit. Diana and Lawrence were taking me to court, challenging the legitimacy of the Riverside development. They claimed that the project violated zoning laws, accusing me of bypassing the town's legal requirements. "This is exactly what I feared," Margaret said quietly. "They're going to drag this out in court, trying to tie everything up in legal red tape." I clenched my fists, feeling the weight of their attack pressing down on me. "I won't let them win. Not this time." The lawsuit was a punch to the gut, but I wasn't going to let it stop me. Diana and Lawrence thought they could use the courts to delay the Riverside project, to shake my confidence and undermine everything we had worked for. But what they didn't understand was that I wasn't some naïve who would buckle under pressure. This fight was for the future of Maplewood, and I was ready to see it through, no matter the cost. The next few days were a blur of meetings with my attorneys, reviewing legal documents, and preparing for the inevitable courtroom battle. The longer this dragged on, the more I realized how much of a hold Diana still had on some parts of the town. But she wasn't going to win this time. I spent late nights at Harrison Properties, going over plans with the team, strategizing our next move. Grace was by my side through it all, offering advice and keeping me grounded when the pressure seemed unbearable. She could see the toll the fight was taking on me, but she also knew what I was capable of. One evening, after another exhausting day of battling lawyers and legal documents, Grace took me out for a walk through the early spring streets of Maplewood. The trees were beginning to bloom, and there was a sense of renewal in the air. The town was waking up, much like the development we were building. "I know you're tired," Grace said softly as we walked, "but don't forget why you're doing this. It's not just about Riverside, it's about making sure Maplewood has a future. You're building something bigger than any of them can tear down." I smiled at her, feeling the warmth of her support. "I know. It's just hard sometimes, when it feels like everything is working against us." "You've already won the most important battle," she replied. "You've shown the town what your vision is. You've given them a voice, and they're with you." Her words were a reminder of what mattered most: the community, the people who believed in the vision I was building. I had to keep moving forward, no matter how hard the fight became. If I let the legal challenges derail me, I would be giving up on everything we had worked for. The next week, we entered the courtroom for the first round of hearings. The tension in the air was thick, and I could feel the weight of the situation pressing on me. Diana and Lawrence were sitting across the room, their smug faces never leaving me. They had made their move, but I wasn't going to let them win without a fight. The hearing began, and my attorney presented our case: how the Riverside development complied with zoning laws, how the community supported it, and how the long-term benefits for Maplewood far outweighed the personal interests of Diana and Lawrence. But the other side was just as prepared. They threw out every possible accusation, trying to cast doubt on our plans and question my leadership. I couldn't help but watch as Lawrence spoke, his words smooth and practiced. "This development is a thinly veiled attempt to gentrify Maplewood," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "It promises all these lofty ideals, but in the end, it will push out the very people it's claiming to help. Maxwell Harrison has no interest in preserving the integrity of this town. He only cares about profit." The words stung, even though I knew they were lies. It was exactly the kind of attack I had expected, but I wasn't going to let him twist the narrative. I stood up, ready to defend everything I had built, everything my father had worked for. "Lawrence Blackwood," I said, my voice clear and steady, "this town is not for sale. You've been trying to buy up its soul for years, but you don't understand Maplewood. You don't understand its people, and you certainly don't understand its legacy." I turned to face the judge. "I'm here because I believe in this town. My father believed in it. The Riverside Project isn't just about real estate, it's about creating a future that benefits everyone, not just the few. It's about making sure that the next generation of Maplewood residents have a place to call home." The room was silent as my words hung in the air. I could feel the weight of the moment, the responsibility of it all. This wasn't just a legal battle, it was a battle for the soul of the town. And I wasn't about to let it slip away. Over the next few weeks, the courtroom battles continued. But slowly, our case gained momentum. The community rallied behind us, and the more we brought the residents into the conversation, the more Diana and Lawrence's influence seemed to fade. People from all walks of life, business owners, families, longtime residents came forward to testify in support of the Riverside Project. They weren't just backing a development, they were backing a vision for the future. It wasn't long before the judge ruled in our favor. The zoning challenge was dismissed, and the Riverside development could proceed without further delay. I could hardly believe it when I got the call from my attorney, informing me of the decision. The victory was sweet, but it wasn't just about winning in court. It was about the support we had earned from the community, the trust we had built, and the long-term promise that we had made to Maplewood. That night, I celebrated with Grace. We went to our favorite local restaurant, the one we'd always gone to when things felt uncertain, when we needed a moment of peace amidst the chaos. The air was thick with excitement and relief, and I could feel the weight of the last few months starting to lift. "I can't believe it," I said, looking at Grace with a smile. "It's finally over. The fight's over." Grace reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. "It's just the beginning," she said with a soft smile. "You've got your whole life ahead of you, and so does Maplewood." I leaned back in my chair, looking around the room at the familiar faces, the people who had always been a part of this town. For the first time, I could finally see the future clearly, a future where Harrison Properties was more than just a business. It was a promise to the community, a legacy that would last for generations. The ruling in our favor was the turning point I had been hoping for. The community's support surged even higher, and I could feel the momentum behind Riverside growing stronger with each passing day. As construction continued, the atmosphere around Maplewood began to shift. People were excited, and they were seeing the vision I had talked about coming to life. There was a renewed sense of hope that hadn't been present in years, and it felt like the town was starting to believe in itself again. But as I learned, victories were often followed by new challenges. It was a few months after the ruling when I got another unexpected call. This time, it was from Alice, my half-sister. Over the past few months, we had become close. She had taken on a significant role in the Richard Harrison Foundation, working tirelessly to provide scholarships and educational opportunities to students interested in sustainable development and community planning. Her passion had become contagious, and I was proud to see how much she had embraced the work my father had started. "Maxwell," Alice said when I picked up the phone, her voice full of urgency, "I need to talk to you. Something's happening, and I think we need to act fast." "Slow down," I said, sitting up straighter. "What's going on?" "It's the foundation," she continued. "We've been approached by a group of investors. They want to back us, but there's a catch. They're looking to take control of the entire foundation and use it to push their own agenda, expanding the scope to include for-profit ventures and partnerships with corporations that don't align with what we're trying to do here." My stomach sank. I had worked so hard to build the foundation, to honor my father's commitment to community and education. The last thing I wanted was for it to become a vehicle for corporate interests that didn't care about the people it was meant to serve. How serious are they? I asked, my voice tight with concern. Very serious, Alice replied. They have the money, the influence, and the connections to make this happen. If we don't act fast, we could lose everything we've worked for. I knew this was another battle I had to fight, but I also knew that it wouldn't be easy. These investors weren't just interested in money, they were interested in control. And that wasn't something I could let happen. Not after everything we had built, not after my father's legacy. I'll be there in the morning, I said. We need to shut this down before it gets out of hand. The next day, Alice and I met at the foundation's offices where we went over the details of the investors' offer. They had promised generous funding for the foundation's programs, but there was a catch. They wanted to push for development projects on land that my father had specifically kept for the community green spaces, parks, and affordable housing. They saw these areas as prime real estate for high-end commercial developments, and they wanted to flip the land for profit. I knew this would happen eventually, Alice said, pacing around the room. These people only care about money. They don't care about our mission or what we've been building here. I clenched my jaw, feeling the anger rise. We can't let them turn my father's vision into another cash grab. We need to fight back. After several tense hours of discussion, we came to a decision. We would refuse their offer and expose their plans to the public. I knew it wouldn't be easy, they would fight back hard, but the foundation had the moral high ground. We were doing the right thing by protecting the land and continuing my father's legacy. We'll need to involve the community, Alice said, her tone firm. If we're going to shut this down, we'll need their support. Agreed, I said. We've already shown them what we can build together. Now, we'll show them what we're protecting. Over the next week, we held a series of meetings with key community leaders, business owners, and local organizations to discuss the threat to the foundation and the land. It was a strategic move, but it also felt personal. This was the very land that my father had fought so hard to preserve, and I couldn't let it slip through our fingers. As word spread, the community rallied behind us. People who had supported Riverside now threw their weight behind the foundation, signing petitions, attending meetings, and speaking out against the corporate investors. We held a public forum in the town square, where I stood alongside Alice, Margaret, and a few other community leaders. This land belongs to the people of Maplewood, I said, my voice clear and steady as I looked out over the crowd. It belongs to our future, to the families who have lived here for generations. It doesn't belong to corporations looking to profit off of our community. The crowd erupted into applause, and for a moment, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The foundation wasn't just an organization, it was a symbol of what we were all working toward. A future where Maplewood remained a place for everyone, not just the wealthy few. The investors didn't back down easily. They threatened lawsuits. They tried to sway public opinion with their wealth and influence, but it didn't matter. The people of Maplewood had spoken. Their support for the foundation was unwavering, and with the media on our side, the investors' power began to crumble. In the end, the investors pulled out. They realized they couldn't win against the unity and resolve of a community that had spent decades building something real. The land remained untouched, protected by the foundation and the people who had invested their hearts and souls into making Maplewood a place for everyone. Alice and I celebrated the victory together, knowing that we had done the right thing. We hadn't just defended the foundation, we had defended everything my father had worked for. His legacy was secure, and now we could continue building on it, protecting the future of Maplewood. As we moved forward, the Riverside project began to take shape in ways I hadn't imagined. The community center was starting to look like a real building, with walls going up and windows being installed. The affordable housing units were progressing, and the first phase of local businesses was beginning to sign leases. There was still so much to be done, but with each milestone, the dream my father had envisioned for Maplewood was becoming a reality. But even as the town seemed to come together, the past had a way of creeping back in. Diana, though no longer in control of the company, had become a shadow that lingered in the background. I knew she wouldn't just disappear from the picture. There was always that part of me, deep down, that wondered if she was plotting something in the wings, waiting for an opening to strike. Grace had been my sounding board, my rock, through all of this. Whenever the pressure seemed too much, she was there to calm me down, to remind me of the bigger picture. As much as I had tried to keep my focus on the work and the future, The weight of my past, my family, my history still loomed over me. One evening, as we sat in the living room of our small home in Maplewood, Grace turned to me with a soft smile. "I think we need to take a step back," she said, her voice gentle. "We've been so focused on the business and fighting off challenges that I think we've both forgotten to take care of ourselves." I looked at her, a little surprised by her words. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've been at this nonstop," she continued, leaning forward, "and I've watched you wear yourself thin. Maybe it's time to take a break, even just for a weekend. Remember what it feels like to just be." The thought of stepping away for even a moment felt foreign, but as I looked at her, I realized that she was right. I had been so consumed by the responsibility of carrying on my father's work and making sure the development went smoothly that I had almost forgotten what it meant to simply enjoy life, to be present in the moment. "Maybe you're right," I said, rubbing my temples. "I've been so caught up in everything, I haven't stopped to breathe." Grace smiled, her eyes warm. "Let's take a weekend. We'll go somewhere quiet. Just the two of us. No phones, no meetings, just us." The idea felt liberating, and I knew that it was exactly what I needed. I had built this entire life around the idea of legacy and responsibility, but I couldn't let those things swallow me whole. There had to be balance, and it was time to find it. We decided on a small cabin in the mountains, far from the chaos of construction sites and board meetings. It was just what we needed: peaceful, secluded, and quiet. We spent the weekend hiking through the woods, sitting by the fire, and talking about everything, about our dreams, our fears, and the future. It was on the second night, as we sat on the porch looking up at the stars, that Grace turned to me with a question I wasn't expecting. "Max," she said softly, "have you thought about what's next for us? After Riverside, after all of this is done, where do you see us?" I took a deep breath, the question hanging in the air. I had been so focused on getting through the next obstacle, the next challenge, that I hadn't really allowed myself to think about what came after. But as I sat there with Grace, I realized that the future wasn't just about projects and business. It was about us, about building a life together and carving out space for ourselves in the world. "I don't know," I said, my voice filled with uncertainty, "but I know one thing. I want to be with you. Whatever comes next, I want to face it together." She smiled, her eyes full of love and understanding. "I'm with you, Max. I've always been with you." That night, we made a promise to each other not just to keep building Riverside or Harrison properties, but to make time for ourselves, to find joy in the little moments, and to never lose sight of the love that had brought us here in the first place. When we returned to Maplewood, I felt recharged, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The Riverside project was moving forward, and for the first time in a long time, I felt confident about the direction we were heading. But even as we made plans to celebrate the completion of the first phase of development, there was still one looming question: what would Diana do next? Despite her silence, I knew she hadn't given up. She was still out there, and I couldn't let my guard down. One morning, as I walked into the office, Margaret handed me a thick envelope. My heart sank when I saw the name on the front: Diana Harrison. I hadn't heard from her in months, and the timing of this envelope couldn't have been worse. I tore it open, reading the letter inside carefully. "Maxwell," it began, "I'm writing to inform you that I have recently acquired a significant stake in Harrison Properties. This letter serves as notice that I intend to challenge your position as CEO and request a formal shareholder meeting to discuss the future of the company." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. Diana had made her move again. The letter from Diana felt like a punch to the gut. I had been expecting some kind of move from her, but not this direct. Her acquisition of a significant stake in Harrison Properties was a strategic play, one that could potentially shake everything I had worked for to its core. I stood there for a moment, staring at the letter in my hands, my mind racing. I'd been so focused on the Riverside development, so consumed by the daily grind of making it a reality, that I hadn't considered the possibility that Diana might be quietly maneuvering to regain control of the company. I looked up at Margaret, who had been watching me carefully. "What does this mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It means she's trying to take you out," Margaret replied, her tone calm but tinged with concern. "If she's acquired enough shares, she could call for a vote and remove you as CEO. It's a long shot, but it's possible." I took a deep breath, the weight of the situation settling in. "We need to get ahead of this." We can't let her destabilize everything we've built. Not now. Margaret nodded. I'll start looking into who's supporting her on the board. We need to make sure we have enough backing to fight this. But Maxwell, you have to be ready. This won't be easy. I knew she was right. Diana wasn't just trying to take back control of the company, she was trying to take back her life, the life she thought she had lost when I returned to Maplewood. This was personal, and it was going to be a battle, no matter how much I wanted it to end peacefully. That afternoon, I met with my legal team and the key members of Harrison Properties who had supported me through this entire process. We needed to prepare for the worst-case scenario, a shareholder vote. If Diana had gained enough shares, she could gather enough support to challenge my position as CEO and potentially take control of the company again. We need to move quickly, my lawyer said. If Diana has been quietly buying up shares, there could be others on the board who are ready to back her. We need to shore up our position, and we need to do it before the shareholder meeting she's demanding. I nodded, already thinking of my next steps. We can't wait for her to call the meeting. Let's take control of the narrative before it even happens. Reach out to the key shareholders who are loyal to me, and let's start a conversation. Over the next few days, I worked tirelessly to shore up support from the remaining shareholders. I met with old allies, reminding them of the hard work we had put in to build Harrison Properties into what it had become. It wasn't just about the profits anymore, it was about the community, the vision we had for Maplewood, and everything we had promised to deliver with the Riverside Development. As I was making calls and meetings with shareholders, Grace kept me grounded. As always, I told her everything about the letter, the potential vote, and the growing tension that seemed to hang over everything I did. You've got this, Max, she said one evening, her voice filled with confidence. You've already proved to the town that you're the right person for this. You're not just a businessman, you're someone who cares about the people, about what this town needs. And that's why they'll back you. Her words helped more than she probably realized. I knew that the fight wasn't just about me, it was about what I represented. It was about standing up for the future of Maplewood, for the families, businesses, and workers who believed in what we were doing. I wasn't just defending my position as CEO, I was defending their future, and that made all the difference. The night before the shareholder meeting, I sat in the conference room, going over the strategy with my team. Margaret, Grace, and a few trusted advisors were by my side, and we went over the list of key shareholders once more. I think we've done everything we can, Margaret said, looking over the final list. It's going to be a close call, but I believe we have the majority. I nodded, my stomach tight with nerves. Let's make sure we have everything in place. If Diana and her backers try to make a move, we need to be ready. As we left the office that night, Grace squeezed my hand. Tomorrow is a big day, but no matter what happens, we'll get through it. I smiled at her, grateful for her unwavering support. You're right, we'll get through it. The following morning, I arrived at the boardroom early. The atmosphere in the building was charged with tension today. Everything would be decided. I walked into the conference room and found most of the board members already seated, talking in low voices. Diana wasn't here yet, but I could tell her presence was already being felt. Her influence, as always, loomed large. I sat at the head of the table, my team beside me. As soon as Diana walked in, the room fell silent. She looked as calm and composed as ever, her eyes scanning the room with that familiar, calculating gaze. Maxwell, she said coolly, nodding toward me. I trust you're prepared for this meeting. I stood up, my heart steady despite the nerves. I'm always prepared, I replied. But let's be clear, this isn't just about votes and shares. This is about what's best for Harrison Properties and the future of Maplewood. Diana smirked, taking her seat. And what exactly do you think that is? Before I could respond, my lawyer stood up, addressing the room. The shareholders have made it clear where their loyalties lie. We have the support needed to keep Maxwell Harrison as CEO. We're here today to finalize the vote and move forward with the leadership of Harrison Properties. The meeting was tense, filled with sharp words and counterarguments, but in the end, it became clear that the board was aligned with me. Diana's supporters were outnumbered, and her attempts to sway votes fell flat. I watched her expression shift from confident to frustrated, but she didn't back down. Instead, she kept her focus, her eyes narrowing as she realized that her plans had failed. When the vote was called, the result was decisive. I had won. Diana's attempt to take back control was officially thwarted. The weight of the victory settled over me as I walked out of the conference room. It had been a hard-fought battle, but in the end, the board had sided with me, and Diana's attempt to wrest control of Harrison Properties had failed. As I walked through the hallways, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. But that relief was fleeting. I knew that, for all the battles I had won, the war wasn't over yet. Diana was still out there, still scheming, but today was a victory, and it was one I had earned not just because of my own efforts, but because of the unwavering support of the people who believed in what we were building together. The Riverside project was moving forward, and with each passing day, it was becoming more of a reality. It wasn't just about property or business anymore. It was about the community, the people who would benefit from what we were creating. And that was what kept me going. Later that afternoon, Grace and I met at our favorite cafe in Maplewood. I had taken a moment to catch my breath, and as I walked in, I saw her sitting by the window, waiting for me. Her smile, always warm and grounding, was a welcome sight after the intensity of the morning's meeting. "You did it," she said, her voice filled with pride. As I sat down beside her, I exhaled deeply, still feeling the rush of adrenaline. "We did it. It wasn't easy, but we're through the worst of it." Grace reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "This is just the beginning, Max. You're building something that will last." I smiled, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in a long time. "It feels like everything is falling into place." She leaned in, her eyes focused on mine. "It is, but remember, there's always more to do. You're not just building a business, Max. You're building a legacy. And you've already shown the town what you're capable of." Her words settled in my chest, warming me from the inside out. It wasn't just about the victories we'd won, it was about everything we were working toward. The Riverside development, the community, and the future of Maplewood. There was still so much to be done, but for the first time, I felt like I was truly on the right path. The next few weeks were busy but promising. We broke ground on the first phase of Riverside, and the town buzzed with excitement. The first affordable housing units were starting to take shape, and the small businesses we had promised to support were lining up to open their doors. The local community center, which had been nothing more than a sketch a few months ago, was now a foundation with walls being built up. But with every success, there was always another challenge waiting just around the corner. One afternoon, as I sat in the office reviewing the progress reports, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen to see a message from Alice. "Max, we need to talk. It's about the foundation. Call me when you can." The feeling that something was wrong crept into my gut as I dialed her number. "Maxwell," Alice said when she picked up, her voice tight with concern. "I don't know how to say this, but there's been an issue. The investors who tried to take control of the foundation before their back, and they're trying to make a deal with some of the board members." I leaned back in my chair, the weight of the situation sinking in. "Are they trying to force us into another vote?" "Not yet," Alice replied, her tone serious. "But they're leveraging their connections to push their agenda. They've been offering deals to certain people on the board, promises of financial backing, resources, and influence in exchange for their support. I'm worried they'll try to take control again." I stood up from my desk, my mind racing. The foundation had become something bigger than I ever imagined. It was a beacon of hope for so many in Maplewood, and I couldn't let anyone jeopardize that. "We need to shut this down before it gets worse," I said, determination creeping into my voice. "I won't let them do to the foundation what they tried to do to Harrison Properties." Alice paused for a moment before speaking again. "I agree, but this time, we need more than just a fight. We need to go public. We need the town to know what's really happening. The people need to see how important this is." I nodded, my resolve hardening. "I'll handle it. Get the board together and make sure everyone knows what's at stake. This time, we won't just defend the foundation, we'll protect it for good." The following week, we called a meeting with the board members of the Richard Harrison Foundation. This time, we weren't just talking about future plans, we were preparing for a showdown. The investors had deep pockets and powerful allies, but they didn't have what we had, the heart and soul of Maplewood behind us. The meeting started with tense silence as the investors, who had been quietly circling, made their presence known. Their representatives, slickly dressed and exuding a sense of arrogance, didn't waste any time with pleasantries. "We're here to discuss the future of the foundation," one of them said, his voice smooth and calculated. "We believe that a more aggressive strategy will ensure long-term financial sustainability for your organization." With our backing, we can expand operations, increase our reach, and grow the foundation beyond what you ever imagined. I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. I appreciate your offer, I said, looking them squarely in the eye, but I'm not interested in selling out the foundation's mission. This organization was built on values on giving back to the community, and I won't let you turn it into another corporate venture. The room was silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. I could feel the tension rise, but I knew I had to stand firm. This was the moment that would define the future of the foundation, and I wasn't going to let it be hijacked by greed. After a long, uncomfortable silence, Alice stood beside me, her voice calm but resolute. We've worked too hard to let outsiders come in and ruin what we've built. If you're truly interested in helping, then support the mission, not your own pockets. The investors exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence faltering. They hadn't expected this kind of resistance. Finally, the lead investor spoke, his tone changing. We'll have to reconsider our approach, he muttered, his voice edged with frustration. But don't think this is over. I met his gaze one last time, my voice steady and unwavering. It is over, for good. The investors backed off, their offers withdrawn. The foundation was secure once again. It felt like a major victory, but the real triumph was the strength of the community, the people who had stood by us and refused to let their vision be manipulated. The road ahead would always have challenges, but as long as we had the support of those who believed in our mission, we would never falter. Grace and I celebrated that night, knowing that the foundation was safe, the Riverside project was thriving, and Maplewood was slowly becoming the town my father had always believed it could be. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was ready for whatever came next. The weeks that followed were a blur of success, tempered with the constant undercurrent of tension that never seemed to fade entirely. The Riverside development was thriving. The first set of businesses had opened their doors, bringing new life to the town square. The affordable housing units were nearly finished, and families had already started moving in. The community center was taking shape, with its walls rising steadily each day. It felt like we were truly building something that would stand the test of time. But even in the midst of this progress, I could feel the weight of what lay ahead. Diana was still out there, and though she had been quiet for some time, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was biding her time, waiting for another opportunity to strike. Grace had been the one to help me push through the uncertainty. She'd become not only my partner in life but also my partner in the work we were doing. Her ability to see the bigger picture, even when everything around us seemed chaotic, was a constant source of strength for me. One evening, after another long day spent on the construction site, Grace and I sat on the porch of the small house we had rented in the heart of Maplewood. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow over the horizon, and for the first time in a while, I felt at peace. You know, Grace said, breaking the comfortable silence, I was thinking about how far we've come. I smiled at her, appreciating the quiet moment. We've come a long way, but it feels like we're just getting started. She leaned back in her chair, looking out at the development in the distance. It's amazing, really. What you're building here, it's not just about the buildings, is it? It's about something bigger. I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. It's about the community, about creating a place where people can live, work, and thrive. My dad always said that property wasn't just about what it was worth, it was about what it meant to the people who live there. I'm trying to honor that vision. Grace smiled softly. You're doing more than honoring it. You're making it real. We sat in comfortable silence for a while longer, each lost in our own thoughts, but both grateful for the moment we shared. I knew that the future wouldn't always be easy, but I also knew that with Grace by my side, I could face whatever came next. The next morning, I woke to an unexpected message. It was from Margaret. I hadn't heard from her in a few days, so the fact that she was reaching out made my stomach tighten. I quickly read the text. Maxwell, you need to come to the office. Something's happening. It's about the Riverside project. I didn't waste a second. I called Grace and told her what was going on, then rushed to the office. As I entered the building, Margaret was waiting for me, her expression grave. What's going on? I asked, my pulse quickening. Margaret handed me a set of documents. As I glanced at them, my heart sank. They were legal papers, another lawsuit. But this time, it was worse than before. This wasn't just about Diana or Lawrence Blackwood trying to challenge the development. This was something new, an injunction filed against the Riverside Project, accusing us of violating environmental laws and misrepresenting the true scope of the project to the public. I looked up from the papers, my frustration mounting. This is insane. We've followed every regulation, every rule. There's no way we violated anything. Margaret nodded, her face tight with worry. I know, but this isn't about what's true. This is about dragging you into another legal battle, draining your resources, and making sure the project stalls. Whoever's behind this knows how to play the game. I clenched my jaw. I'm not going to let them win. Not now. Not after everything we've built. Margaret gave me a sympathetic look. I know you're not, but this could be a long fight, Maxwell. They've timed this perfectly. I sat back in my chair, trying to process what was happening. It was clear that someone, likely Diana or one of her backers, was working behind the scenes again. They had used every tactic in the book to try and sabotage Riverside, and now they were resorting to legal means. But I wasn't going to back down. We need to counter this immediately, I said, standing up. Get our legal team on this. I want to see every document, every claim they've made. We'll show them that this project is transparent, legal, and in full compliance. As the days passed, the legal battle intensified. Our team worked tirelessly to gather evidence, to disprove every claim made in the injunction. I knew this wouldn't be over quickly, but I was determined to push through. We couldn't let these tactics derail everything we had worked for. The pressure was mounting, but I was no stranger to stress. I had faced challenges before, perhaps not on this scale, but I had always found a way to fight back. And this time would be no different. But in the midst of all this, one thing became crystal clear. I couldn't do this alone. I needed the people who had supported me all along: Grace, Margaret, the community, and even Tyler, who had shown up unexpectedly with an offer to help in any way he could. Tyler's change in attitude had been nothing short of remarkable. After everything that had happened, it was clear that he had found his place in the family business. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could rely on him. I know this is a huge mess, Max, Tyler said as we sat together in my office one afternoon, going over the latest legal filings. But I'm in this with you. We'll fight this together. I'll do whatever it takes. I smiled at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. Thanks, Tyler. I really mean it. It means more than you know. The fight raged on for weeks, with both sides digging in their heels. The tension reached a breaking point when Diana herself showed up at one of the court hearings, accompanied by her lawyers. She was still every bit the determined, cold figure I remembered: calculating, relentless, and willing to do whatever it took to reclaim what she felt was hers. But this time, she wasn't getting away with it. I stood before the judge and laid out the case for Riverside. The development was not only legal but beneficial to the community. We had followed every rule, and every accusation thrown at us was baseless. The judge listened intently, then, after several long hours of deliberation, ruled in our favor. The injunction was lifted, and the Riverside project was allowed to continue without further delay. It was a hard-won victory, and as I walked out of the courthouse, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. Diana had tried to drag us into a long, drawn-out fight, but we had prevailed. The Riverside development was moving forward, and it wasn't just about buildings anymore. It was about the future we were building for Maplewood. The victory in court was a turning point, but it wasn't the end of the struggle. As soon as we received the ruling in our favor, I knew that Diana and Lawrence Blackwood wouldn't just walk away quietly. They were relentless, and this was just another battle in a war they had been waging for years. But with the court decision behind us, we were free to move forward, and that was exactly what we were going to do. The momentum of Riverside was undeniable. The community was behind us. The first phase was nearing completion, and the families who were moving into the affordable housing units were beginning to feel the real benefits of what we had promised. The local businesses that had taken a chance on the development were thriving, their storefronts buzzing with activity. I spent more and more time at the site, overseeing the construction, meeting with business owners, and engaging with the families who were now calling Riverside home. I could feel the difference every day. There was an energy, a vitality, that came from building something real, something that mattered. But even as the project flourished, there was always the looming shadow of Diana. She was still out there, waiting for an opportunity to strike. I knew she wouldn't let go of Harrison Properties so easily. And while I had won a significant victory, The reality was that there was still much work to be done to ensure the company's future was secure, that my vision for Maplewood would survive, and that we could continue building the community we had promised. One afternoon, I was meeting with Margaret in my office, going over the latest progress reports, when she slid a new set of papers across the desk. The look on her face made my stomach tighten. "What is this?" I asked, already sensing the unease in the air. Margaret hesitated before answering. "It's a buyout offer from Diana." I opened the papers, my heart sinking as I read through the terms. Diana wasn't just offering a small sum to buy back some shares, she was offering a full-scale buyout of Harrison Properties, trying to reclaim control of the company in one fell swoop. "She's serious," Margaret said softly, her voice steady but filled with concern. "This offer could wipe you out entirely. She's using the legal troubles to her advantage, and she thinks she can leverage the company's future against you." I sat back, staring at the papers in front of me. Diana's offer was aggressive, and I could feel her cold, calculated presence behind every word in the contract. She wasn't just offering money, she was offering control. And with control came the power to destroy everything I had worked for. I looked up at Margaret, my mind racing. "We can't let her do this. Not after everything we've built." She nodded, her expression resolute. "I know, but we need to decide how to move forward. This isn't just about fighting her. It's about securing the future of Harrison Properties. If she gains control, everything changes." Later that night, I met with Grace at our house, feeling the weight of the decision pressing on me. The house was quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos I felt inside. Grace was sitting at the kitchen table, looking at me with concern. "What happened?" she asked softly, sensing something was wrong the moment I walked in. I explained the offer from Diana, how she was trying to buy out Harrison Properties and reclaim control of everything I had worked for. The more I talked, the more frustrated I became. The thought of losing everything I had fought for, everything my father had built, felt like a betrayal to the legacy he had left me. Grace didn't say anything for a moment. She just watched me, her eyes soft but filled with understanding. Finally, she spoke, her voice gentle but firm. "Max, you've come so far. You've built something real here. You've earned the community's trust, and you're doing more than just making money. You're building a future for Maplewood. Don't let her take that away from you." I looked at her, feeling the weight of her words. She was right. This wasn't just about the company or the money, it was about everything we had worked for. Everything we had promised to the people who believed in us. "I can't let her win," I said, my voice filled with determination. "But I also can't do this alone. We need the community, the board, and everyone who's backed us. We have to make sure that what we've built isn't torn down." Grace stood up and walked over to me, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You're not alone, Max. You've got all of us. And you've got this town. We've seen what you're capable of. Now, it's time to fight for it." The next few days were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and strategy sessions. We couldn't let Diana take control. The Riverside Project, Harrison Properties, and the future of Maplewood were at stake, and I wasn't going to back down. I called a meeting with the board of directors and several key shareholders who had supported me throughout the years. We discussed Diana's buyout offer, and I laid out my plan. We needed to rally the community, show the board that the people of Maplewood were behind us, and push back against Diana's offer. "This company isn't just about numbers and shares," I said, looking around the room. "It's about what we've built here. It's about the Riverside Project, the families who are already moving in, the businesses that are thriving. We can't let someone like Diana come in and tear that apart for her own gain." The room was silent for a moment before one of the board members, a longtime ally, spoke up. "You're right, Maxwell. We've all seen the impact of Riverside on this town. We can't let that slip away." "I'm with you." One by one, the other board members and shareholders voiced their support. It wasn't just about the business, it was about the future of the town, the people, and the promise we had made to them. By the end of the meeting, we had the backing we needed. We were ready to fight. We would make sure that Diana's buyout offer was rejected, and we would do whatever it took to protect the future we had created. The next morning, I met with my lawyer and prepared a formal response to Diana's buyout offer. We would publicly reject the offer and make sure the community knew what was happening. There was no way Diana would win this time. As the days passed, the pressure mounted. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let go of what we had built. The Riverside project was more than just a development, it was a legacy. And I would fight to the end to ensure that legacy was protected. The fight with Diana had reached its peak. We had rejected her buyout offer, and the battle lines had been drawn. It was no longer just about business, it was about the very soul of Maplewood, the future of the people who believed in what we were building. And I was ready to fight for it. The pressure was immense. Every decision felt like it had the weight of the entire town on it. But through all the stress, I found a sense of clarity. I had something that Diana didn't, a connection to the community. A vision that resonated with the people of Maplewood. They trusted me, and that trust was stronger than any amount of money or legal maneuvering. I spent the next week preparing for the public showdown. We held a press conference to address the buyout attempt and the future of Harrison Properties. I wanted the people of Maplewood to know exactly what was happening and how we were going to protect the vision we had promised them. The press conference was packed. Reporters from all over had gathered, eager to hear what I had to say. I stood behind the podium, looking out at the sea of faces before me. Some were familiar residents, local business owners, workers from the Riverside project. Others were strangers sent by larger media outlets. I cleared my throat, the weight of the moment sinking in. "Thank you all for being here," I began, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "We're here today because we're at a crossroads. Some would have us believe that the future of Harrison Properties and of Maplewood is something that can be bought and sold. That development is about who can pay the highest price." I paused, letting my words settle before continuing. "But I believe in something different. I believe in the people of Maplewood. I believe that the future of this town is not about profit, it's about community. It's about creating a place where families can live, work, and grow. It's about building something that lasts, something that benefits everyone, not just the wealthy few." I looked out over the crowd, seeing nods of agreement, the faces of people who had been part of this journey from the start. "We've already seen the impact of the Riverside project," I continued. "The families who've moved in, the businesses that have opened, the people who are already thriving because of what we're doing here. This isn't just a development. This is a future we're building together." There was a quiet murmur of support from the crowd, and I could feel the energy shift. The people of Maplewood were with us, they knew what we were doing was right. "I won't let anyone take this away from us," I said firmly, my voice rising. "We won't let Diana or anyone else tear down what we've built. This town belongs to its people, and together, we will make sure it stays that way." The room erupted in applause. The energy in the room was electric, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a deep sense of peace. I had no idea what the next chapter would bring, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't alone in this fight. We were all in it together. The next few days were a whirlwind of public support. The media coverage of the press conference had shifted. The narrative, the community was rallying behind us, and the pressure was mounting on Diana. It wasn't just about the business, it was about the people who had stood by us, who had believed in what we were doing for Maplewood. They weren't going to let her destroy it. In the end, Diana had no choice but to back down. She realized that she couldn't win the fight she had started. The people of Maplewood had spoken, and the board of Harrison Properties made it clear. We were moving forward with our vision, and nothing was going to stop us. Diana's withdrawal was swift and in many ways anticlimactic. She retreated from the spotlight, and though I knew she wasn't truly done scheming, I had a sense of finality. She had underestimated the power of the community, and now she knew what it felt like to be on the losing side of something that mattered. With the battle behind us, Grace and I found a moment to breathe. It had been a long, exhausting road, but the future of Riverside, Harrison Properties, and Maplewood was secure. We had come through the storm, and now it was time to focus on what truly mattered. One evening, as we walked through the nearly completed Riverside development, I stopped and looked around. The place was alive with energy, families moving in, businesses opening their doors, the community center nearing completion. It was everything we had promised. Grace looked at me, her hand in mine. "This is it, isn't it?" she said softly, her voice filled with awe. "Everything we've worked for." I nodded, feeling the weight of it all. "It's just the beginning. We've got so much more to do, but for the first time, I feel like we're on the right path." We stood there, looking out at the development, at the future we had built. It wasn't just about buildings and property, it was about something bigger. It was about creating a future for the people who had trusted us, for the generations to come. We had fought for it, and we had won. A few months later, I stood at the grand opening of the Riverside Community Center, surrounded by the people of Maplewood, old friends, new neighbors, business owners, families. The room was buzzing with excitement, and as I took the stage to give a speech, I felt a sense of pride that words couldn't quite capture. This is what we've built together, I said, looking out at the crowd. This isn't just about me or Harrison Properties. This is about all of us, about the future we're creating for our families, our businesses, and our town. This is what happens when we come together, when we believe in something bigger than ourselves. The crowd erupted in applause, and I could see the hope and excitement in their faces. We had done it. We had built something real, something that would last. And it was just the beginning. I turned to Grace, standing beside me, and smiled. We did it. She squeezed my hand, her eyes full of love and pride. We did, and as I looked out over the crowd, I knew that this was more than just a development. This was the beginning of a new chapter for Maplewood, one that we had built together, and with that, the future of Maplewood was secure. The legacy of Harrison Properties and the promise of Riverside lived on, not just in buildings and land, but in the community that had risen to support it. The fight had been long, but it had been worth every moment. And as I stood there, looking toward the horizon, I knew that whatever came next, we were ready for it.